Hello and welcome to Lisa's Stamp Studio. My name is Lisa Curcio. Today is Monday, August 2nd, and the year is 2021. This is a YouTube live streaming event, and whether you are returning to my channel or this is your first visit, I am so glad that you are here with me. We are going to be doing 5 card making ideas using vellum. I actually had a glance at my notes really quick because I wanted to make sure I got the verbiage right. I want to also make sure that you stay with me through the whole video because we are going to make 5 different things. The great thing is I'm going to teach you the 5 card making ideas for the vellum, and I also have 5 completed cards to share with you. So make sure you stay with me. The great part about tonight as well is I'm going to be including a free project sheet. Down below the title of this video, when the live stream is over, you're going to be able to navigate over to my website where you're going to be able to download a free project sheet for all 5 cards. That's going to give you all the cutting dimensions and the supplies as well as pictures too. So glad that you are here with me. If you would do me a favor before we get started, I've got a couple housekeeping items I want to go over with you. First, I'd love to chat with you. So do me a favor and log into your YouTube account. That is your Gmail address. That's going to entitle you to chat or leave a comment here on YouTube. And that is a requirement of YouTube, not of Lisa's Stamp Studio. And next, I want to introduce you to Gina Curcio Hawley. You'll see her name here in blue and a little wrench next to her name. She is my YouTube moderator, and she is also my daughter. She holds a position here at Lisa's Stamp Studio as our sales and marketing director. And guess what? She's been stamping for as long as I have, all 23 years. She was stamping when she was 5 years old. She is more than versed to be able to answer your questions about products, provide links, and all of that. So she's here to help interact with you because quite honestly, there is no way for me to keep up during the live stream because you came to see me stamp. So I think we're ready. I'm going to go ahead and get the camera all situated and we're going to get started. Here we go. I'm hoping that you are going to enjoy tonight's projects. And if you do, I want to ask you to do me 2 favors. First, give me a thumbs up here on YouTube. It helps immensely. You have no idea. The second is share this video with your crafting friends. Pin it to your Pinterest board and share it on social media. All those things really help me to keep content free here on YouTube. I'm pointing this out for the last week because today is the very last day of the Designer Series paper sale. It ends today at 11:59 p.m. Mountain Time. It's a 15% discount on annual Catalog Designer Series papers. All of them except for 2 are included. You're going to love this because I don't know about you, 15% off equates to free shipping, a little bit of sales tax for those of you that have to pay sales tax in your region. So make sure you do that before the end of today. I'm going to go ahead and set that aside and I'm going to bring these in because guess what? Tomorrow is a huge day in the Stampin' Up! World among paper crafters everywhere and here in the studio. We are introducing these brand new catalogs. We have the mini catalog and we have the sale brochure. Now, you're going to be able to find tons of products on my website tomorrow after 3 p.m. Mountain Time. Please keep that Mountain Time in your mind because everybody gets hung up on the time difference. So I want to make sure you knew about that. All right, let's get started. We're working with vellum tonight. For those of you that don't know what vellum is, it is an opaque type of paper. Now, years ago, now I'm dating myself, this used to be placed between sections of a wedding invitation when it was stuffed inside an envelope and mailed to you. So if anyone's my age, you might remember that. This is thicker than that. This is what Stampin' Up! Calls vellum cardstock. There are lots of uses for this, and today I'm going to give you 5 different ideas on how to use vellum, and I'm really excited to get started. Now, my first one, I'm going to start with something really simple. Actually, they're all simple, but I want to be able to start with something that's really basic, especially if you're a brand new paper crafter. This is an embossing folder, and I have really loved this. This is the Thanks and Hello. It comes as a duo. You're going to notice that it's very narrow, but this is a great tip for you in your card making. You're going to actually place your vellum inside the embossing folder, and you're going to run it through your die cutting machine. Now, to save space, because I literally have 5 piles of things I'm going to share with you tonight, I did not bring the Stampin' Cut and Emboss machine in, but you're going to use your embossing machine, whatever you have at home, and that's going to emboss your paper. I do want to call your attention to the fact that I cut this a little bit longer than I need, and that's for a specific reason. Now, once it comes out of the embossing machine, it looks like this. Now, it might be a little bit difficult to see, so let me put my silicone craft sheet underneath there. Maybe a little bit of contrast. I think that's a little bit better. Isn't this gorgeous? Now, you'll notice, too, that the impressions from the embossing have actually turned white. But I have something very important to share with you before we finish this card and move on to the other 4 ideas. And that's about these thicker 3D embossing folders. Here's one of them here. I love this greenery folder. It's going to be fantastic for the holidays. But I want to show you an example. You're going to see here that the greenery folder is quite a bit thicker than the standard folder that I used here. And let me show you what happened. I actually took a piece of vellum and I put it inside of here and I embossed it. Now keep in mind, this is going to provide really deep, deep impressions. Let me move this one out of the way so that you can see a little bit better. Gorgeous, huh? But look at, because of those deep impressions, it actually ripped my vellum. Remember, vellum is very delicate, so it's thinner than cardstock. Because of those deep impressions, this can happen. And it can actually split in the center as well. And that's common with any embossing machine because of the density of the folder. So I want to give you an important tip if you're going to be using these folders. What you're going to do is you're going to take your vellum and you're going to place it inside your folder. The other thing you're going to do before you place this inside your die cutting machine, I want you to add another piece of very thin paper. This is just computer paper, printer paper, over the top, and then you're going to emboss it. So I want to show you a difference. This is the first one that I did. I labeled it number 1. This is number 2. Look, there's no ripped edges whatsoever here at all. That little extra paper is going to provide a little extra oomph when you emboss it so that you don't have to worry about those little frayed edges. Now, these small embossing folders are fantastic for the first card I'm going to make with you. So I want to show you how we're going to complete that. So please keep that in mind. All right, let me move this all out of the way. I'm working with a lot of stuff tonight in a small area, so I just beg your forgiveness right off from the get-go. All right, I'm going to start with a piece of white cardstock to complete this card. And I'm going to use a brand new stamp set called Delicate Dahlias. Any other flower lovers out there besides me? Isn't this beautiful? Love it. Now, there's a couple things about this you need to know. If you love to color, we got you covered because you got beautiful outline images. But if you don't like to color, we also have you covered. This stamp set is actually a free selection in the sale brochure that debuts in the sale tomorrow. It's called Celebration. For every $50 you spend in product, you can choose something from the sale brochure absolutely free. And I don't know about you, if it's free, it's for me, right? This is one of those selections and it's absolutely beautiful. Now, there are a couple things about this that I want to share with you. The first is this is what we call a distinctive stamp. So if you look at this, you're going to see some beautiful density here. Let's go ahead and use it and I'll walk you through that. I'm going to start with my Memento black ink and you're going to see here that I have that pretty dahlia. Now you're also going to see I pulled out the solid image. I struggled, my stamping friends, because these are supposed to line up. So I had a hard time kind of pivoting in this to get them aligning time after time after time. So I want to show you what I did. Here, I took the stamp off the block and I decided to just pick one spot and I took a very blunt tip, nothing sharp, of course, and I made a little black dot right here. Do you see it? With my Sharpie marker. That's going to be at the top when I stamp. All right, so let's go ahead and let's ink that up face up. That stamp is rather large. It's not going to fit really good on the ink pad. And I find that if I ink it this way, I'm less likely to miss a spot. All right, so there we've got it all inked up. That black dot is here, and we are going to stamp and we are going to press. With these outline images, I want you to take your time and trace out that design because often we get a little bit too excited and we go too quickly, right? We don't get a really good impression. All right, I'm going to cap that black ink pad, and I'm going to move that off to the side. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to come in with Highland Heather. Any purple lovers out there? Now, remember I mentioned to you that this was actually very symmetrical. It has to be aligned perfectly. So once I determined where it went, I did the exact same thing. Don't you love photopolymer, how it sticks? Once I turned it and I knew which way it aligned, I took that same marker and I made a dot. This saved me hours and hours and hours of work as I was getting ready to make more and more of these flowers. Okay, so I'm going to open up my ink pad and again, I'm going to ink it face up. Now, this is the most beautiful stamp you have ever seen. I'm going to hold it over here. Can you see the differences in the color? Well, if you can't, hang on. I'm going to do my best not to get my head in your camera view because at my age, we've got to work close, right? And then I'm going to stamp. Look at, do you see it now? There are light and dark areas. These distinctive stamps were actually designed to look more like photographs than stamped images. Is this not a wow or what? This in itself does all the work. But again, if you want the outline image that you can actually color in, you absolutely can. Now, I did decide to take this a step further, and I cut out that image using my scissors. And I know some of you are thinking, scissors, oh my gosh, there's no die. There is no die. But I want to tell you something. These are very, very pointy around here, and it was super easy to do. Remember to leave yourself some cardstock. You don't want to cut right on that stamp line, and you're going to cut that out. Now, I did do that ahead of time, which left me with this, and I couldn't resist adding some Wink of Stella. Now, if you've never used this product before, I want to give you a couple tips about it. First and foremost, when it comes, it has a black spacer in the middle. You're going to need to unscrew that and take that off. That's just for shipping. You're going to shake it really, really good. And then there's words push and push. And then what you're going to do is you're going to prime the pen so that the shimmer is going to come down to the bristles. Now, the very first time you prime it, you're going to get a little puddle. It's okay. But then you literally brush on the shimmer. It has an alcohol base, so it's going to dry very, very quickly. And guess what? You don't have to deal with glitter and glue. And I absolutely love that. But I did decide to step this up just a little bit further, and I stamped that same flower again in a really pretty yellow color because I'm going to do some layering here. Now let's go back to the vellum and let's incorporate that in our card. Now I have a piece of coordinating cardstock here that's Highland Heather, and this is the beauty of Stampin' Up! Products is the color coordination. The ink pads coordinate with the markers and the cardstock and so on and so forth. It makes your life so, so easy. Remember, I mentioned to you that I want to make sure that we cut this a little bit longer than we needed because this is the layer before we put it on the card base. These edges here are going to help me hide the adhesive I'm going to place on the back. So let me show you what I did. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place it here just visually in the center, and I'm going to flip this over. And then once I'm kind of happy with it, I'll have some positioning here. Here on this side and this side, I can see from the back. Watch, take your bone folder, score along the edges of the cardstock on both sides. That's going to create the creases for you. And then what you can do is simply fold this to the back here and then fold this to the back here. I am going to grab my Stampin' Seal Plus, which is here, and I'm going to add a little adhesive to this side, and we're going to seal that shut. And then we're going to do the exact same thing on this side and seal that shut. And that now has left me with this, which means there is seamless color here. You don't have any adhesive poking through. And I think it's stunning. All right, so let's go ahead and let's start building this. And then I've got 4 more card making ideas using vellum. That's just white, basic white cardstock. I scored it in half before you joined me. And all I'm going to do now is I'm going to take this and I'm going to add some adhesive to the back side. Now, I know that my Stampin' Seal Plus is very, very strong, so I don't have to add it everywhere. As a matter of fact, I happen to be very kind of heavy-handed when it uses adhesive. And if you're not careful, that can do a number on your cardstock. So it just needs a gentle touch. And I left a nice border of the white all the way around. Now I'm going to go ahead and take these flowers and I am going to add some dimensionals to the back. Don't you love shimmer? Now, do you see how I put a pencil mark there? Because when I was aligning this and cutting this, I wanted to make sure that on my cardstock I had an indication where it was going to go. That was just a Lisa thing when I was busy designing for you. I'm going to add some dimensionals here, and then I'm going to use my paper piercing tool attachment on my Take Your Pick tool to help me release those paper backings. That makes my life super duper easy. And then this is going to go here. I wanted to feature this stamp set on this first card, but because I think it's absolutely stunning, and I wanted to make sure that you knew how to use it when you get it with your celebration rewards. Now, this is literally a mimic of what's underneath. Now, if you really want visual interest and you want to be different, just tip it a different way. If you're like me and you're right-brained and you want them to be identical, then you're just going to find that place so that it matches and you're going to tack it there. That stamp set also includes stamps for the leaves as well as fillers. So what I did with these is I added one to the back, very nice and simple, because we're going to tuck this. So I'm going to place one here and one here. Beautiful cards do not have to be complicated. Please keep that in mind. Beautiful vellum provides a lot of oomph to a card, and you know I can't resist myself. So here we go. We've got some of these beautiful and colored jewels. I'm loving these because these colors really can pick up other shades quite well. So I'm going to add them to the vellum, and I found that they show up really, really pretty on here. And they actually kind of shine through there. So I'm just going to put a couple here and a couple there, and then our card is finished. There we go. Really simple use of vellum. I'm going to give you a real quick look at that embossing on your vellum, and I want to show you how to adhere it. Okay, let me move these things out of the way because I want to move on to idea number 2. This time, we're going to step things up just a little bit, and I've got a larger piece of vellum. Now, if you're going to use a large stamp like I am, I recommend that your vellum is a full half-size sheet. This is the Stamparatus stamp positioning tool. I'm going to beg your forgiveness right now because I forgot to list this in the project sheet. But please know that the Stamparatus stamp positioning tool is also sold in my online store. All I did was I mounted that beautiful Daisy stamp set right there, and it's a background stamp called Daisy Garden. Now, this is in the annual catalog. You'll notice, too, that this is on a slight angle here. So what I like to do is I like to take my stamp case and stick it right underneath there, so this is all on a level playing field. The next thing what I'm going to do is I want to ink this up because I'm going to do a little stamping on top of here. And again, this is bigger than I need on purpose. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place this here. I'm using one magnet. I find it's completely strong enough to tack down my paper. It's in my upper corner. You're also going to notice that this stamp positioning tool has hinges. So it has 2 plates that come with it. So if you're doing that 2-step stamping like we just did with the dahlia, you can make one after another really, really quick. All right, I have to get one more thing ready before we get started, and that is this. This is my white embossing powder, and I have a little old tray I'm going to be using here. I'm going to go ahead and open that up. I keep mine in a single container to kind of contain my life, and I use a spoon. That helps me tons. I want to have that nearby. For this, I'm going to use Versamark ink. Versamark ink is a watermark ink, but it also works famously with embossing powders. I'm inking it face up to try to ensure I don't miss a spot, and I'm going to cover the whole thing. And you're going to see why in just a few minutes, why I made the vellum so large. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn this right on top of here. And because of the osteoarthritis in my hands, I'm cheating. I'm actually using a dry eraser, and I'm going to rub over that. That just kind of helps me just transfer that whole thing. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the vellum off. So this is what we're after right now. Let me set that off to the side for just a moment. I'm coming back over to here. And you can see this is a really big piece of paper. So this is where the spoon comes in handy. And we're going to come over this and we are going to powder this. I find that doing half at a time and letting it fall back into my powder container works really, really well. Now, I am going to give you some really important embossing tips for vellum. So this now is actually a powder, which we're going to turn into an embossed, almost kind of like an enamel finish. Okay, so right now, as you can see, it's very, very powdery and there's not too much we can do with it. But this is where the heat tool comes into play. Now, I realize this is difficult to see, so let me go ahead and just move my silicone craft sheet underneath there just a little bit so you can see it better. When I turn the heat tool on, it does have 2 speeds. I prefer speed 2 to kind of set that powder, which is going to make it look like an enamel finish, which is what we're after. I am going to tell you it's a little loud with the microphone, so I'm going to talk you through it. You're going to hold the vellum and the tool a few inches from each other. The most important thing I can tell you is to start in one spot at a time because that powder is going to start to look more like an enamel finish, and it's going to conduct its own heat from the heat here and from the heat of the paper, and it's going to spread, and it's going to turn this whole thing into this. So I'm just going to switch. This is called the magic of being live. We can just switch from one thing to the other. One of the things about embossing on vellum that's very, very important that I want to share with you is if you get your tool too closely and the paper starts to curl, heat emboss from the back. How many of you knew that trick? This has just been a lifesaver for me. If you heat emboss from the back, it helps to take that warped paper from the heat and helps to straighten it out. Oftentimes, if I find my paper is too warped, I'll even go over it on the back side when I'm all finished to help straighten it out. And that's really important and very, very helpful when you're creating layers. All right, well, I took this even a step further and I cut it down and I made it smaller. The great thing about using a large background stamp like this is you've got lots of pieces here you can turn into other cards, which is exactly what I did here. So I've got this piece here, and now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a frame for it. Now remember, I have completed cards for all of these. This time I decided to cut a frame, and I used two sets of dies to do that. I did the stitched rectangles, and then I used these beautiful scalloped contours. When you nest these inside of each other, you're going to get this. So you can see I used the frame here for the scallop, and then I put the rectangle inside. I put them all together at one time and ran them through my die cutting machine. Now you might be looking at this thinking, how are you going to get those two pieces together? And that is what I want to share with you next. Now I want to give you another tip about heat embossing. If you've done heat embossing before, you know you've kind of got that gritty surface from the powder, especially if you got the ceiling fan on like I do. Take half of a Swiffer. We use these on our floors and they work fantastic in your craft room. And you're going to go over your work surface. And what it's going to do is it's going to pick up all those little tiny fine pieces of powder, which is going to ensure they don't end up in your ink pad, which is never fun. All right, using that silicone craft sheet so that you can hear or you can see, I am going to go ahead and add these together. Now, here's my best tip for you. Use a glue dot in your four corners. So I'm going to take one here and I'm going to press it all the way in the corner. Do you see how I'm adding the vellum right to the glue dot? And I'm going to do the exact same thing here. And then we're going to go around all four corners. We want just enough to hold this to that frame. If you're really good with liquid glue, and if you've watched my channel before, you know I'm not, you can go ahead and use that. Obviously, the frame has to be able to compensate for that, which this one does. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tack those corners down, which then leaves this all connected. Now, you're going to see here that it's still open, and this is where my next tip comes in. I actually love, love, love my mini dimensionals. So they're the smaller version of what I used on my first card. And I keep a pair of scissors here in the studio that have a piece of ribbon on them, which designates they're for those sticky projects. Do you see how much of a border is left here that are not die cut in the hexagon? Well, this is perfect for this project. Watch. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to cut that strip. You're going to take off that edge because these are nice and narrow, and it's going to go right along the outside edge of the vellum. You want to make sure that it's not going to hang over from the front so that it's not visible. Isn't that fantastic? Now let me show you how the completed card turned out. Let me pull that out for you. If you missed it a couple weeks ago, I shared a stenciling technique, and that is part of what the background is here, but look at that. Isn't this striking? I chose not to add a greeting because maybe like you need to pull out a card from time to time and just to say hello or thinking of you, and you just don't know what to put. But absolutely gorgeous and another fantastic idea for using your vellum. All right, let's move up one more step and let's move on to the next project. This next project is going to be using the stamp set called Festive Foliage. I'm loving this. Really has a fun holiday theme because of the holly berries and of course the holly leaves. But let me show you what I did here. I went ahead and I did the exact same thing that I just showed you, but I heat embossed it in gold. Now keep in mind, there's gold, there's silver, there's copper, there's white, there's black. You can have a field day with this. But now I decided I wanted to add some color. Now, intuitively, you may think, okay, alcohol markers, well, that will work, but I'm going to tell you what, I like my dye-based markers for this way better, and I'm going to show you why. Instead of coloring from the front, turn it over, and we are going to color from the back. This is going to give you more of a stained glass look, and it's going to be absolutely beautiful. Now, I have one that's already finished. We're not going to color the whole thing, but I want to talk to you on why I like the dye-based markers better for this than I do the alcohol-based. So first of all, you wouldn't want to color from the front with your alcohol-based markers because it'll actually color the embossing because it's an alcohol marker. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to use the Mossy Meadow marker here first. Thick end, thin end. So I'm going to take that thick end. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm just going to do that big area here with the holly because I think that's easy for you to see. And I'm just going to color this in. It's going to take some time for this ink to dry because it's not alcohol-based. This is a dye-based marker. This was super easy to color, was very therapeutic. I put on some music and I just had a good time. But I wanted to incorporate some of the red in here. So I went out on a limb and I thought to myself, well, why not? Let's go ahead and just color these in red. When I was finished, it was 99.9% done. One of the reasons I love it when it's finished, well, not only that, look at this. Do you see here? This is the back side. Do you see how some areas are darker than others, which is going to make this look more like a stained glass image? It's absolutely beautiful, isn't it? So pretty. But wait, we're going to make this even prettier yet. So keep in mind, coloring that vellum is another way to use it. And here is a finished card. That festive foliage stamp set is gorgeous, but I paired it with the brand new gold holly leaves, which are coming out in the new mini catalog tomorrow. I added a layer of gold foil just to play up the embossing in here. And look, I used some of those holiday rhinestones to add some color here in the corner and just embossed a very simple greeting, a very classy and simple card, and another way for you to use your vellum. All right, let's keep moving on. I've got two more for you. The next one is going to be using the stamp set called Snow Buddy Better. Boy, that's a kind of mouthful. I got to make sure I say that right. I have a thing for snowmen. I always have. I think they're lots and lots of fun. But I want to teach you something with this one. This is a little bit different than what you may be used to. So I'm going to protect my work surface for this because we are going to be using a solvent-based ink for this. When you stamp on vellum, it is slow to dry. It's really important that you use a solvent-based ink if you want it to be permanent and you don't want the color to run. Keep in mind that if you use a dye-based marker on water-based ink, which is what Memento is, you're going to happily have bleeding, okay? So I'm going to use this. I'm going to go ahead and take off my Dahlia stamp because I need that for this one. And unfortunately, I only had a couple blocks. And here's my cute snowmen right here. And let's go ahead and mount them on top of here. You are going to, well, that didn't fit really good, but I think it's good enough for the demonstration. Let's go ahead and take the StazOn ink, and we're going to go face up because I don't want to miss a spot. Solvent-based ink is a real stinker. So you want to make sure as soon as you're done, you clean the stamp. And this is going to get stamped here. Lots of firm, even pressure again, because I'm using an outline image, and then I'm going to lift. This is going to need time to dry. This is immediately going to my chamois or my scrub to clean it. There is also a StazOn cleaner, which is safe for your red rubber stamps. Hear what I said, red rubber stamps. You do not want to put that on your polymer stamps, which are what the Dahlia is, okay? That would ruin it because of the interactiveness. And that's going to reduce any of that black residual that remains on your stamp, which if not removed over time can actually transfer to your cardstock on another project. So I have one here that's already finished, that's good and dry. And now what we're going to do is the next technique. I'm going to bring in my Pierce mat. Now this product and everything else you see is going to be in my online store for you. This time what we're going to do is we are going to work from the back side. So we're going to flip this over once again. And are you ready? We're going to use the stylus tool for this. My stylus tool came from my Simply Scored board. This is included with it. It's a great scoring board. There's a wider end and a smaller end. I'm going to recommend you use the wider end because remember, this is a kind of a thinner paper that's opaque. And then watch what I'm going to do here. This is what I call vellum etching. So it's super easy, and I'm just going to take it and I'm going to scrape. Now, you might not think it's doing too much, but wait until I turn this over. So you're kind of just going to scribble. And this is a great thing for the kids because what it's doing is it's actually turning the vellum white from the impressions of the stylus tool. Now, when you turn it over to the front, you're going to see you've got some etch marks there. Now, I want you to keep in mind that this technique is going to be very distinctive for certain card projects. So let me bring in the card that I created to show you what it looks like when that etching is all done. Is this incredible or what? Is that fun? So again, a fantastic way to be able to use this etching technique on your vellum, another idea for your card making. But it's a great way to add some emphasis and color here using vellum without coloring it in. Now, these areas that are colored, I actually used my markers to go ahead and color it in, and I did color from the back. As you can see, it's more vibrant here than it is from the front. I poked 2 holes through my layer to string my ribbon so I could avoid adding adhesive here and then marring this and then some of those beautiful new sequins. So this is called vellum etching. That's what I'm calling it. Okay, so now we've got 4, but the last one I think is my favorite. All right, so let's go over and let's work on that one next. This time, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be using the Penguin Place stamp set. Now, this stamp set is going to be coming out in the mini catalog that debuts tomorrow, and it has an amazing accompaniment. It has this penguin punch. Now, I'm going to show you how it works in just a minute, but let's get to the technique for the vellum first. Now, I have a strip here of vellum cardstock. Okay, same thing that we've done before, and you're going to see that it's long and narrow, and that's on purpose. Cut more than you need. Now, from this stamp set, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to pull out my little penguin image. So I'm going to go ahead and take that out now. Some of my blocks were being used on another card, so unfortunately, I have to do this with you. Sorry. So I've got this one here. Again, keep in mind, I am not recommending StazOn on photopolymer. That's actually going to ruin your stamp over time. So this time we're going to need a little bit more patience because we're going back to the Memento ink. It is going to be slower to dry. And if you're like me and you're a little impatient because you're creating, take your heat tool on the lowest setting to help dry and speed up this process. But when you see this technique in this card, it's totally worth it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open this up and I'm going to ink up my penguin. So I tap, tap, tap. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to stamp it right about here. So I've got one there. I'm going to do the same thing right next to it here. All right, I'm cleaning my stamp just off camera. Never leave your stamps dirty. If you take good care of them, they're going to last you eons. Now, inside that same stamp set, there's these adorable little feet. That's what you hear me peeling them back. Let's go ahead and add those as well. Watch. We're going to tap, and we're going to add these here. We're going to tap, and we're going to add these here. Now, you can see he's also missing a nose, right? So inside that stamp set, there's a little nose as well. So I think you get the gist. I don't think I need to go ahead and stamp that because when you see the finished card, it's going to make a lot of sense. This has to dry. Take your heat tool or let it sit. The great thing about this technique is you can go ahead and make a bunch of these and let them all sit out to dry. I have one that's all dry with the face. I even have a scarf on this one. These images are all part of the stamp set, so you've got some really fun accessories in here. But are you ready? We're not going to use it like this. We're going to slide this down for just a moment, and I'm going to show you the finished card first. Do you see what I did? Okay, watch. We're going to take this, and we're going to go like this. And then you're going to adhere it to the back half of the layers, just like we did to the Dahlia card. Okay, this is the layer here, and that's going to give you the most incredible mirrored image. Now, this punch is worth its weight in gold. So I punched the little feet out with pumpkin pie cardstock, just use strips, and then I stamped the face because the images are here. You don't have to worry about the eyes being individual. They're all one piece. And then I just mimicked the placement of the feet onto where the vellum was. And then this is the penguin body right here, the black part. And this is the white insert, which is here. Super, super easy to use. So I wanted it to look like it was ice, so it had a nice reflection of it. So this is called the vellum reflection technique. Very important that it's dry. I can't stress that enough. And please make sure that you flip it over so that you have that adorable little reflection feature there. So let's just recap. So we've got this one, which was our first, actually our last vellum idea. And then we have this one, which is etched. We have this one, which is coloring the back of a vellum image. Keep in mind, I didn't emboss this, but you can do it with outline images too. And then our second one that I showed you was just regular embossing on vellum to create a frame. That's a beautiful stencil background. And the very first one, if you're brand new, nice and easy, emboss on your vellum cardstock. And do me a favor, make sure you add that little piece of paper if you're using those thicker embossing folders. So I have 5 different ways here for you to use vellum in your card making. Now I'm going to flip the camera around. I want to share a little bit more information with you, and I want to talk to you about tomorrow and next week's live. I can't wait to come back and read your comments. I come back and I read every single one. I would love to know your favorite. Please leave me a comment below. Your feedback is critical to me. It helps me in the design process as well. Don't forget, hit the thumbs up button, subscribe, because you're not going to want to miss next week's live. I'm going to be coming back with you with a fun fold. Do me a favor too, head over to lisastampstudio.com. If you're brand new there and you scroll down about halfway, a pop up is going to come up and you can subscribe to my weekly free e newsletter. In that newsletter, I share a tutorial not shared on any of my other platforms, and I would love to include you. It's a no frills email, absolutely free. Cutting dimensions, pictures, supply, the whole bit, it's all there for you just for the taking. Also, mark your calendar because you're going to want to be back with us. I'm going to be live with you, which is next Wednesday. Looking at my calendar, it's August 11th already at 8 p.m. Eastern Time for a really neat, fun fold. And I'm reaching back over for these because I have made a huge mess here in the studio. Tomorrow is the big day. I would be blessed to earn your business if you don't already have a Stampin' Up! Demonstrator. You'll find my exclusive reward information over at lisastampstudio.com. Make sure you click down below and grab your free project sheet for all 5 projects tonight. Gina, thanks for all your hard work and moderating tonight, and I look forward to seeing you with me next week. Have a great night.